This is Phoenix, and I'm going to read a little excerpt from my published autofiction, The Street Kid. If you like the book, you can find it on Amazon. Without further ado, here it is. Animals know what you're really like, but they've gotten the wrong impression about you. All of them. That's why you need to show them where you really stand. Phoenix found himself inside a neighborhood. He didn't remember how he had gotten here, only remember that there was a reason why he was here. With the sun shining ever so brightly, with Phoenix sure that he was, in a few moments, going to be the happiest kid in existence, if he just told himself that, if he believed it could really happen. The neighborhood was set up in a peaceful way, and yet in a way, walking through it was like walking through a labyrinth, because Phoenix continued to get lost inside of it. As he twisted around house after house, he needed to find his way out of it, because if he didn't, he wouldn't be able to continue on his way. There were places he needed to be. That was when, up ahead, Phoenix saw two things moving toward him. He couldn't tell what they were, just saw that they were golden, and the closer the things moved, the more Phoenix realized they were angels in their own right. And finally, Phoenix saw that the things moving toward him were golden retrievers, and they were the most beautiful dogs that Phoenix had ever seen. Looked as though they hadn't known a moment of unkindness, only knew confidence and love and glory. And Phoenix let them come toward him, and he petted them. Once they were there, they're going to help you find your way out. Phoenix began to walk in the place that felt right, knowing that his mind was connected with these dogs. Being around them was strange, because even though it was already warm outside, Phoenix seemed to be warmer. It's because the dogs radiate truth and light and, of course, warmth. He felt like he was sleeping on a warm bed. I care about what happens to you, dogs. The dogs continued to stay by Phoenix's side, and he couldn't understand it. Why did these dogs trust Phoenix? Phoenix wasn't that great of a guy. He'd made so many mistakes in his past, and yet they clung to him as though they trusted Phoenix with their life. It was so strange. What made Phoenix feel like $1 million, though, was that he felt they were never going to leave him, at least not unless Phoenix needed them to go, which he didn't think was going to happen, as they were tight-knit. It was as though Phoenix had been the master of these dogs for his entire life, as though there was an imaginary cord, or leash, keeping the three together. Phoenix watched the sunshine splash the dogs, and he realized that they had been on the streets for a very long time. Not because they looked dirty, they looked anything but that, or because they seemed tired, but because they acted as though they hadn't received affection in the longest time. Phoenix felt the same way, and he was glad that he and the dogs could connect in that way. Phoenix meandered through the labyrinthine neighborhood, amazed that no one was around. However, he figured that this wasn't a permanent thing. He knew eventually something was going to happen. He shouldn't have counted on something bad to happen, because literally right when he was thinking that, a truck pulled up beside him. Phoenix looked at the dogs to make sure they were fine, and they only looked down, as though to keep a low profile. And Phoenix saw that the truck was for animal control. "Hey," the guy said. "Hey, you." Phoenix didn't say anything. "I have nothing to lose. These aren't my dogs, but don't you get it? I'm giving them what people like you can't give." Just looked at the guy in the face. He hesitated for a moment, must hate the look I gave him, but then said, as proudly and arrogant as ever, "I will give you half an hour to dispense of these dogs. If you don't do what I say, I'll come back with full force and take these dogs away." Phoenix responded with, "You don't decide what happens to these dogs, this gift from heaven." The guy was confused for a moment, but then he smiled and said, driving away, "Half an hour." Phoenix waited until the truck was gone. He looked at the dogs, saw that they both had bored looks on their faces. They aren't intimidated by this abuser of power. Phoenix continued to walk through the neighborhood, thinking about it all. They know these dogs can lead you out of this neighborhood. They want you to stay. They know it's peculiar. These dogs are staying next to you like glue, and they can't stand it. They can't stand that you're affectionate towards God's creatures. Well, I am getting out of this, and these dogs are going to be safe. And realizing that evil people just couldn't stand when such things as loyalty came into focus, because loyalty was a trait that couldn't exist, and that was all that was being shown right now. "Come on, guys," Phoenix said, and continued to walk along the sidewalk, enjoying the peaceful, quiet sound of the dogs padding along beside him. It felt good to have two creatures next to him. Phoenix had never had anything like this happen before, but he knew it was happening for a reason. As for what that reason was, he wasn't sure, except for the obvious reason that they were leading him out of this place. As they moved deeper through the neighborhood, Phoenix began to feel as though the environment was trying to work against them. He didn't receive this understanding fully until he watched as one of the dogs slipped into a strange pond-type thing that shouldn't have been there, but was there nonetheless. He watched as that dog struggled to try and get out. He noticed how tired the dog was, barely able to move, and Phoenix wanted to help, but he had the strongest feeling that he needed to stay away from the dog, that the dog needed to learn on his own, or otherwise he was never going to be as strong as he could be. And it wasn't long before the other dog got inside the pond-type thing and began to nudge the trapped dog out, and Phoenix knew the struggles were happening because the people of the animal control and the murderers were trying to keep Phoenix from forming a bond with pure creatures, and that made Phoenix sad, but this was the way that the murderers worked. They massacred everything that was good in this life, and there was nothing Phoenix could do about that. However, the dog was able to get out the other dog, and it wasn't long before both of the dogs, drenched to the bone, but panting with quiet happiness, began to walk beside Phoenix again. Phoenix continued to meander through the strange environment, wondering if he was really headed out, because he didn't recall any of the scenery around him. However, he felt the dogs trying to talk to him, and they were telling him that there was nothing to worry about. They were guard dogs, and they were going to lead Phoenix outside of this place, and it made Phoenix happy to understand that these dogs really were by his side until the end. And so they continued along, and Phoenix expected to see the animal control truck again, but he didn't see anything. All he saw was an environment that was trying to work against them, but that didn't stop the sunshine from drenching everything, from reminding that there was hope, even if it didn't seem that way. And Phoenix loved how the sunshine washed over the dogs, and he was sure that they couldn't look any more beautiful, these dogs who only deserved love, because they were so gentle, so humble, so loyal, and Phoenix would do anything to protect them, anything at all. He felt as though he wouldn't be able to see them hurt, and that was why he needed to separate from them soon enough. It was anticlimactic and unfair, but Phoenix needed to keep the dogs safe, and he could only do that if he said goodbye, as that was the way the murderers worked. That was why Phoenix couldn't really be around his friends, because of the strength in numbers, and the irony that strength in numbers was actually weakness in numbers, because the murderers were stronger when everyone thought they could help each other, but in reality couldn't. Phoenix finally arrived on the outside of the neighborhood and knew where he was, and knew now it was time to let go. He petted the dogs, talked to them, petted them some more, told them that he was always going to be with them in spirit, that they could never give up, and never allow forces like animal control to tell them how they should live. There was nothing wrong with roaming the streets. The dogs seemed to understand. Phoenix felt horrible, severing the strong connection, the strong tie that existed, but he had to do this because it was for the better. When he was sure that they weren't going to follow him, Phoenix began to walk as far away from the neighborhood as possible. They won't truly disappear. They are with you. Don't give up thinking that they always stay with you in one way or another. Again, this is from my book, The Street Kid. I hope that you enjoyed what you heard. And again, this is Phoenix. Thank you.